Amazing transformation. Single dad humiliated on blind date revealed by a millionaire's unexpected remarks. Jake stared at his reflection in the mirror, adjusting the collar of his only decent shirt, the one he saved for job interviews and special occasions. The stark white contrasted with the grease stains that permanently marred his mechanic's uniform, a constant reminder of the life he worked so hard to maintain. Tonight he was stepping into uncharted territory, a blind date set up on an online platform he had hesitated to join. Was it too soon to put himself out there? The weight of his past loomed over him like a heavy blanket. But the thought of his kids needing more, a better life, a better role model, pushed him forward. He turned the key in the ignition, the sound of the engine roaring to life, offering a fleeting comfort against the backdrop of his anxiety. As he pulled into the upscale restaurant's parking lot, Jake's heart raced. The atmosphere hummed with sophistication. He felt a sharp contrast against the polished cars around him. The smooth, glamorous facade of the venue seemed to mock his simple world of oil-slicked overalls and tire changes. Would this Sarah even understand him? Would she see beyond the grease and grime to the heart of a father desperately striving for something greater? Jake shook off the doubts. Tonight he could be more than just the mechanic. He could be someone worthy of respect. "Hi, Jake," Sarah greeted, her smile blinding. Perfectly manicured nails tapped together gracefully as she settled into her seat. The conversation started innocently enough, but it quickly twisted. "So, what do you do?" she asked, leaning forward, eyes sparkling with expectation. "I'm a mechanic," he said, voice steady but unsure. Her laughter rushed in, cutting through him like glass. "Oh, that's quaint. I guess someone has to fix the cars for people like me." Jake's stomach twisted, her words a dagger lodged deep in his chest. Each remark felt like a reminder of how far he had fallen from his dreams. The whispers of self-doubt clawed at him, pushing him towards self-condemnation. It stung. This was a woman who had never known the weight of sacrifice, who thrived in a world where currency mattered more than character. A fire ignited within, fueled by the humiliation. Instead of retreating, he felt a surge of determination. He couldn't let Sarah's contempt define him. He would rise, starting tonight. By the time Jake left the restaurant, he felt a charge coursing through him. This was not the end. It was just a catalyst spurring him to act. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference.
Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Jake took the plunge and enrolled in night classes at a local trade school, embracing the thrill of automotive design like a lifeline. Each sketch he laid down was a whisper of hope, a representation of his dreams. There in the quiet clatter of the classroom, he found guidance from Mr. Thompson, a retired engineer whose wisdom cracked open Jake's mind, spilling possibilities he had never considered. The more he learned, the louder his aspirations rang. But then he stumbled into the realization that Sarah was the mastermind behind a prestigious automotive competition. It became a frantic buzz in his mind, electrifying yet terrifying. The chance to be recognized, to prove his worth, hung in the air. Confronting Sarah again, the very essence of derision loomed like a shadow before him. Could he really stand in that arena with his life laid bare, walking the path from humiliation to greatness? Jake's heart raced with the looming deadline, every moment stretching taut, filled with fear. He feared failure like he feared his past creeping back into his life. Could he reclaim his dignity and shape a new legacy for his children? Tension coiled tighter, leaving him suffocating in uncertainty as he stood at the precipice of decision. The answer lingered just out of reach, waiting to ignite his spirit or consume it whole. Jake plunged into the noise of the classroom, the chatter of eager students echoing around him. He felt a sense of belonging there, surrounded by kindred spirits chasing their designs and ambitions. Flipping through his sketchbook, each page was an exhilarating blend of dreams and determination, transforming the trauma of the past into a vibrant projection of the future he yearned for. Every line he penned became part of a restorative journey, connecting him with the threads of his once-forgotten aspirations. Yet a relentless nagging thought lingered at the edge of his consciousness. Perceptions of inadequacy were hard to shake. Despite the supportive murmurs from Mr. Thompson, the specter of Sarah's disdainful laughter echoed too strongly in his mind. "We all start somewhere, Jake," Mr. Thompson encouraged one evening during a session focused on form and function. "A mechanic's insight can be a strength. You see problems from the ground up. That's invaluable." As he spoke, something sparked inside Jake, a revelation. Perhaps his humble origins could serve as the foundation for innovation rather than ridicule. Armed with renewed resolve, Jake began to channel his past into his sketches. He experimented with concepts that merged practicality with avant-garde designs, reminiscent of the machines he had spent years repairing. His projects morphed into metaphors, the embodiment of resilience, persistence, and transformation. Outside the classroom, Jake faced inner turmoil as the impending competition rattled his nerves. With every passing day, the pressure intensified. He frequently replayed the moment of Sarah's dismissal, but now, fueled by frustration, he decided she was more than a source of humiliation. She could be a benchmark of what he wanted to surpass. One evening after class, he steeled himself, determined to confront her, to no longer be merely a name on her list of underestimated mechanics. As he entered the upscale garage where Sarah hosted networking events, the scent of polished metal and fresh paint filled his lungs. Bright lights flashed down on sleek vehicles. It was a realm so foreign, yet familiar. "That's the spirit, kitchen mechanic turned artist." Sarah's voice sliced through the air like a whip, laced with condescension as she stood among a group of executives, eyes glinting with mirth. He clenched his fists, fighting the tide of embarrassment, summoning every ounce of resolve. He would not back down this time. "I'm here to grow, not to entertain you," he shot back, surprising himself with the steadiness in his tone. The laughter from her entourage stilled for a moment, shocked by his boldness. Her gaze shifted, eyebrows raised. Jake seized the brief silence to continue. "I'm entering the competition, and I will show you and everyone else that there's more to mechanics than meets the eye." A flash of something indecipherable flickered across Sarah's face. Was it intrigue? He could only hope. This time, he refused to be the punchline. He would be an innovator, a creator. He imagined standing on the stage before the judges, revealing a prototype that would demand respect, not ridicule. Jake felt electric, surrounded by an environment buzzing with opportunity and judgment. The fear clawing at him morphed into a palpable force, guiding him. He stepped away, heart racing, as he resolved to pour every ounce of his energy into transforming his dreams into reality. As he drove home that night, he envisioned designs taking shape, colored by the authenticity of his life experiences and emotions. This was his turning point. Could he truly reclaim his dignity and craft the legacy he wanted for his children? Or would the shadows of self-doubt creep back in, dimming the light he had finally managed to kindle? One thing was certain: he would not let this chance slip away without a fight. The competition was just around the corner, whispers of impending judgment lurking around him, and he knew the moment was approaching when he would have to face the culmination of his journey. Would he rise exhilarated or crumble under the weight of his past? Jake's commitment to his vision fueled a restless urgency in the days that followed his confrontation with Sarah. The classroom buzz, once a source of comfort, now heightened his anxiety. It was the playground of ambition, where ideas clashed and creativity thrived.
With each flick of his pencil através da página, he was wrestling with the remnants of his past while creating the future he wished to inhabit. During moments of clarity, he noticed that practicality in design had a unique allure, an elegance that emerged from functionality. He channeled his knowledge as a mechanic into every sketch, embedding somber memories of grease-stained hands and the rhythmic beats of engines into his creations. Yet a voice simmered beneath the surface, muttering doubts that threatened his growth. Was he truly capable of transcending the stereotype that haunted him? In the shadows of his mind, Sarah's disparaging remarks loomed large. The laughter of her entourage still clung to him, taunting the very essence of his identity. He began to wonder, was his desire to prove himself diverting him from the true joy of creation? Navigating through the fog of uncertainty became his daily battleground. With a week left until the competition, Jake decided to cast aside his fears and assumptions about the judges, focused solely on refining his prototype. After pouring countless hours into redesigning the mechanism that would showcase his influences, both mechanical and artistic, he felt a stirring of purpose ignite within him. He would unveil not just a product, he would display his journey. His evenings ebbed into the realm of obsessive creation, reworking designs to perfection. Late nights turned into early mornings, each hour bleeding into the next, until fatigue clawed at him, whispering to relent. The exhaustion brought moments of vulnerability where his insecurities lurked, enticing him to fall back into the darkness. Why pursue this relentless path? Who would care about his work? In those moments of doubt, the visions of his children's faces became bold reminders of his purpose. I won't let them see me back down, he thought, pushing aside the negative chatter. They deserved an example of resilience, a father who fought against all odds, paving the way to a future where dreams weren't confined by limitations. The day before the competition filled Jake with anticipation and dread. He stood in front of the mirror, scrutinizing the man he had become, a resilient figure adorned with grit and vulnerability. Each imperfeição em seu reflexo mirrero intrincado da inovação. The emotion swirled like a storm inside him, excitement for the possibility of success, dread at facing the judgment of the unknown. As darkness caiu, ele saiu para a oficina, com os ecos da sua batida coração.
O protótipo aguardava-o, uma culminação de noites largas e dele introspecção. A quietude confortável do seu espaço o cercava, mas não sem um toque de ansiedade que intensificou com cada tique do relógio. Justo quando ia apertar um parafuso com o mesmo fervor que havia aplicado à sua paixão pelo desenho, seu celular vibrou no tablo.
It was a message from one of his classmates, an invitation a un pré-competition gathering. He hesitated, feeling the weight of his obligations at the workshop pressing against him. Can I step away? He thought. Shouldn't I focus solely on my project? But beneath that reluctance was the gnawing realization that the networking and support of peers could provide powerful motivation. It was a necessary venture, despite his apprehension. As he arrived at the gathering, the chatter filled the air. Faces of familiar classmates turned towards him, and for the first time in a long while, Jake felt a flicker of acceptance, a realization that he was part of this world, not merely an outsider aiming to crash in. They were all converging toward a common goal. It was enriching, yet daunting. "Jake, you made it!" one of them exclaimed, pulling him into conversation. But as laughter echoed around him, he locked eyes with Sarah across the room, standing at the center of a group that thrived on adulation. There it was, the source of his doubt, the benchmark he had set out to surpass. The moment hung in the air as Jake wrestled with a rush of conflicting emotions. Would this chance at connection strengthen him, or would it remind him of the long climb ahead? As he took a deep breath, he could sense the impending confrontation with doubt. Was he ready to build bridges towards others, or would he retreat back into his shell of isolation as the competition loomed closer? The final countdown had begun, and the stakes were rising. The laughter wrapped around Jake like a fog, but the warmth of camaraderie couldn't drown out the tight knot of anxiety in his chest. He had stepped away from his workshop, leaving behind the refuge of steel and design for a room alive with light and people. The contradiction felt alien. Here, surrounded by classmates who shared a dream, he felt more isolated than ever, particularly with Sarah's presence looming in the background, a constant reminder of his self-doubt. As he joined a small group engaged in animated discussion about their projects, Jake's thoughts drifted back to his prototype. Would the judges see the artistry and the grind that fueled each component? Or would they dismiss it as just another piece of high school work? Each laugh and cheer seemed to taunt his internal struggle, pushing him toward a reality he desperately wished to escape. "Jake, what's your project about?" a voice pulled him out of his thoughts. A classmate was looking at him expectantly, curiosity etched on their face. The question hung in the air, innocuous yet heavy. "It's a design that integrates mechanical and artistic aspects," Jake began, the words spilling out like a timid trickle. As he spoke, he felt the weight of Sarah's gaze anchoring him to the ground. Could he rise above her judgment, or would he remain trapped in the shadow of her doubt? The knot tightened. A blend of fear and determination surged within him. He shifted the focus of the conversation away from himself, asking for feedback on others' projects, keenly aware of his own hesitance. Connecting with others felt like a necessary distraction, yet it held the prospect of forging relationships that could aid his own journey. But as people shared their passions, a thought erupted in his mind. Would they even care about his contribution? Letting that idea linger a moment longer, he felt a wave of desperation wash over him.
Jake stood at a crossroads. Should he confront the doubts that gnawed at him, or slip back into the comfort of avoiding judgment? Pushing through self-imposed barriers, he decidedly chose the former. "Can I show you something?" he asked, feeling a surge of bravery coursing through him. The group nodded, intrigued. Jake pulled out his phone and showed them a few rough sketches. The innovative mechanics, the emotional appeal embedded in the design. As he explained his vision, he saw interest spark in their eyes. The tension in his chest eased slightly, transforming into a flicker of excitement. Suddenly, Sarah stepped forward, with her unmistakably critical demeanor piercing through the folds of his confidence. "You think that's enough to impress anyone? You know there's a steep curve, right?" Her voice cut through the moment, weighted with skepticism. The laughter from earlier turned into a hush, the room freezing around Jake. Her eyes glimmered with the thrill of competition, and in that moment he felt like a picture frame crumbling, ready to burn under the spotlight of contempt. But there was a shift. He wasn't going to let her disdain redefine him. "Actually, I do," he replied, voice steadier than he felt. He locked eyes with Sarah, refusing to back down. "I'm not just a mechanic, I'm an artist. This isn't just about impressing others, it's about embracing who I am. I'm tired of being boxed into someone else's expectations." Jake's words hung in the air, charged with a newfound conviction. For the first time, his identity didn't feel like an anchor dragging him down. It surged upward like a beacon. He embraced the doubt that had haunted him, twisting its sharp edges into clarity. As the gathering resumed its energy, he could sense the change within himself. With each beat of his heart, a realization dawned. He wasn't diminished by Sarah's taunts, but fueled by them. The competition ahead felt less daunting and more like a stepping stone to his true purpose. Yet, even as he stood tall, a shadow lingered over him, whispering of the uncertainty that awaited him in the competition. Would he be able to stand firm when faced with the judge's scrutiny, or would the ghosts of the past emerge once more to thwart his resolve? Amidst the chatter, the ticking clock reminded him that time was running out, and the next challenge was just around the corner. What awaited when he stood before the judges?
He could feel the tension of possibility crackling in the air, marking the beginning of his ultimate showdown. How far had he really come, and was he truly prepared to define himself on his terms? Jake's heart raced as the vibrant energy of the room pulsed around him. The moment he had stood up to Sarah had ignited something deep within, stirring a mix of exhilaration and apprehension. He felt unshackled, yet the looming competition weighed heavily on his mind, a specter reminding him of all he still needed to achieve. He took a moment to step into a quieter corner, away from the laughter and chatter, yearning for clarity. It was time to outline his steps, to craft a pathway from doubt to confidence. With a swift motion, he pulled out his sketchbook, the one filled with both finished designs and chaotic ideas scrawled haphazardly alongside one another. The tangible evidence of both his talent and uncertainty lay before him, urging him to embrace the chaos as part of his identity. What if his prototype was more than just a project? What if it could revolutionize how people interacted with technology by blending functionality and emotional experience?
He realized then that this wasn't merely a design to juggle mechanical parts. It represented his dedication and a reflection of his vision. Embracing this perspective felt pivotal. He understood that the best designs often sprung from vulnerability, from the very doubts that had threatened to drown him. As he jotted down notes about user experience, the concept of emotional engagement sparked new ideas. But even in this productive enclave, doubt flickered. Would the judges grasp his vision? Would they understand the labor and love embedded in every design decision? Competing against Sarah, who thrives on aggressive ambition, felt daunting. Determined to galvanize his resolve, Jake recalled the encouragement he had found among his peers in that earlier discussion. Perhaps he could engage with his classmates again, solicit their opinions, and refine his ideas through their feedback. Deepening those connections with fellow designers and students might infuse his project with diversity, revealing aspects he hadn't yet considered. With renewed purpose, he approached a small gathering across the room. "Hey, everyone," he called, suddenly more confident than before. "I'd really love your feedback on my prototype. I think I have some ideas that could really elevate the user experience, but I could use fresh perspectives." The sudden spark in their eyes ignited a sense of kinship, and Jake felt the warmth of acceptance as they engaged him. Ideas flowed, bouncing between them, igniting conversations and possibilities. Each suggestion they made unfurled new layers of understanding. An unexpected critique from one could be transformed into an enriching insight for his design. With every exchange, Jake felt an exhilarating buzz of energy, pushing him to stretch further, deeper into uncharted creative territories. After a few invigorating discussions, he felt an imbalance creeping in, anxiety nipping at the edges of his budding confidence. The closer the competition loomed, the more palpable his fears grew. The stakes were rising. What if he failed to convey his vision? Would he once again find himself haunted by the doubt that previously restrained him? Taking a steadying breath, he reminded himself of the strength that lay not only in design, but in collaboration and vulnerability. The unconventional approach he now embraced, one that melded artistic intent with mechanical precision, felt disruptive enough to challenge the norm while still anchored in integrity. Challenged by his doubts, yet buoyed by newfound support, Jake left the gathering with his sketchbook gripped tightly in one hand and purpose hammered into his chest with every step. He had a vision to refine, a project to bring to life, and a fierce desire to confront judgment without faltering. But as he headed back to his workshop, a discomfort simmered deep within him, a reminder that external validation would not be his primary metric of success. He would confront the judges soon, and their opinions would be a test not just of his design, but of his entire identity. Could he traverse this final barrier without reverting to the familiar shadows of inadequacy? The impending moment of truth lay just ahead, whispering promises of validation and igniting fears that echoed through the recesses of his mind. Would he emerge victorious, or would the pressure crush his resolve once more? Jake stood at the doorway of his workshop, the soft light from the desk lamp spilling over the cluttered space. He glanced at his prototype, the centerpiece of his dedication and creativity, resting silently as if awaiting the culmination of their shared journey. The vibrations from the bustling atmosphere outside faded into a dull hum, allowing anxiety's grip to tighten around him once more. Sitting down at his desk, he flipped open his sketchbook, absorbing the myriad of notes, sketches, and vibrant ideas. Each page was a reflection of his struggle and growth, telling a story that transformed with every turn. Yet shadows loomed, doubt wrapped its tendrils around his mind. What if the judges couldn't see him? Not just as another designer, but as a man longing for validation. Determination flickered in him again. This wasn't merely about winning. It was about expressing who he was. In that moment of solitude, he reached a pivotal realization. If he kept thinking of the judges as gatekeepers of his worth, he would never find peace in his creations. Embracing this revelation, Jake decided it was time to flip the script, to think not of competition, but of connection. He thought back to his classmates' feedback and the sense of camaraderie shared during those conversations. Ideas exchanged had felt liberating, vibrant.
For this, what he had been missing was simply allowing others to see his work for what it was, a collaborative effort infused with multiple perspectives. The emotional resonance sparked by their discussions brought clarity to the clutter in his mind. With renewed conviction, he grabbed his phone and sent out a message to the group, proposing an informal workshop at his place. He wanted to foster an environment of collaboration, bridging the gap between design and emotional connection. It was an opportunity not just to refine a concept, but to thicken the threads of community woven into his work. Later that evening, as his classmates gathered, Jake felt a wave of energy washing over him. He greeted them with an open smile and a confidence that seemed foreign yet invigorating. He adjusted his approach, inviting them not only to critique, but to immerse themselves in the heart of his vision. He shared the emotional narrative behind his prototype, its potential to engage users on a deeper level. Their enthusiasm flooded the room, and the air buzzed with creativity. They debated, laughed, and exchanged ideas that spiraled beyond his original vision. This unexpected synergy blossomed into an exhilarating push, igniting new thoughts and perspectives that breathed life into his designs. Jake wasn't just the creator anymore. He was a facilitator, learning from his peers as much as they learned from him. The night drew on, but the dialogue flowed unhindered. Each voice added layers of insight previously overlooked, helping him navigate the intricate balance between function and emotion. Suddenly, his fears began to dissipate. The path to his presentation started to feel less daunting, emboldened by the community he'd fostered. Yet, as the final words were shared and laughter lingered in the air, a new form of uncertainty crept back. What if he had shifted from creator to collaborator too quickly? Would the essence of his original vision be lost in the intertwining of many ideas? Could he maintain his unique voice amidst the chorus of others? Jake stared at his prototype, emboldened yet anxious. The dichotomy of individuality and collaboration presented itself as an intricate challenge. As dawn broke through the window, illuminating the messy space filled with sketches and ideas, he understood that this balance wasn't just an external design requirement. It was a reflection of his internal struggle. With renewed clarity, he would forge ahead. His designs must guide him, but the potential connection with his audience would add depth to his narrative. But as he worked late into the night, thoughts swirling around him, the realization struck like a lightning bolt. The next presentation could reshape not just his project, but all he had come to represent. Would he have the courage to sail into this new territory, seamlessly blending his voice with others while retaining his essence? Jake stared at his prototype, emboldened yet anxious. The dichotomy of individuality and collaboration presented itself as an intricate challenge. As dawn broke through the window, illuminating the messy space filled with sketches and ideas, he understood that this balance wasn't just an external design requirement. It was a reflection of his internal struggle. With renewed clarity, he would forge ahead. His designs must guide him, but the potential connection with his audience would add depth to his narrative. But as he worked late into the night, thoughts swirling around him, the realization struck like a lightning bolt. The next presentation could reshape not just his project, but all he had come to represent. Would he have the courage to sail into this new territory, seamlessly blending his voice with others while retaining his essence?
The blend of collaborative innovation and his individual expression appeared to clash, creating a cacophony of conflicting ideals. He had vowed to integrate their ideas without losing sight of his own identity, but the fear that it would dilute his vision lingered, casting a shadow over his focus. In a surge of resolve, he shifted his approach. Instead of trying to mesh every suggestion into a singular vision, he would allow the threads of collaboration to complement rather than overshadow his own voice. This evolution required courage, the courage to assert his own vision amidst the chorus of contributions, the courage to prioritize what felt innately Jake. Jake stepped back from his workbench, eyes scanning his surroundings. The workshop, once a refuge of solitary creation, now buzzed with potential and shared energy. The tools and materials were not just resources, but extensions of his evolving narrative. With renewed clarity, he recognized that although his classmates had introduced new perspectives, the foundation of his identity remained intact, echoing in every nuance of his design. Sitting down, he started to formulate a cohesive narrative for his presentation. He envisioned conveying not just his design, but the dynamic interplay of collaboration that had refined it. It was an intricate tapestry he was weaving, one that showcased the evolution of not just his prototype, but also his growth as an individual. He needed to share the conflicts he had faced, the fears he grappled with, and the courage he summoned to embrace the complexity of collaboration. Yet, as he reached for a fresh sheet of paper, shadows of doubt once again crept in. Could this presentation truly reflect the journey he had undergone? What if, in his quest for sincerity, he inadvertently exposed too much vulnerability? The thought gripped him, paralyzing his hands momentarily over the page, a stark reminder that authenticity often beckons discomfort. Taking a deep breath, he reminded himself of the stakes. This moment required authenticity and risk. By sharing his story, the missteps, the insights, and the breakthroughs, he invited others to connect with him on a deeper level. He wanted the judges, standing in front of him, to recognize not just a well-crafted design, but the pulse of human experience behind it. As he began to draft his conclusions, however, a sudden realization struck him. The time to finalize his thoughts loomed closer, and he was still wrestling with whether to incorporate one of his classmates' bold suggestions that contradicted a core aspect of his philosophy. Would embracing their idea compromise his narrative, or could it enhance it? The room around him felt charged with unresolved energy.
Jake found himself grappling with an internal battle. Should he hold fast to his original vision or allow external influences to shape it in ways he never anticipated?
The clock was ticking, and the pressure mounted, pushing him to confront not just what he had created, but who he was becoming in the process. As the workshop quieted with anticipation, Jake realized he stood not just before judges, but before a pivotal moment of self-definition. The path forward was veiled in uncertainty, but one certainty rang loud and clear. He was on the brink of a revelation that could redefine not just his prototype, but his very identity. Would embracing this risk propel him into uncharted territory, or would it lead him down a path he wasn't ready to travel? The days flew by like the dust swirling around Jake as he crafted his prototype, each hour intensifying the pressure to make the looming presentation count. It was not just the ticking clock that fueled the urgency, but a deeper, more personal struggle, one that demanded he stretch beyond his comfort zone and confront the parts of himself he had long avoided. Jake had decided to incorporate aspects of his classmate's suggestion, an idea that initially struck him as alien to his vision. Yet he sensed an unexpected synergy stirring within him. Each reinterpretation of their concepts melded with his own, igniting a flicker of excitement he had not anticipated. For the first time, he felt that this was less about sacrifice and more about transformation. His identity didn't have to remain static. He could evolve and include other voices without losing his own. The prototype took on new dimensions, both aesthetically and conceptually. As he tinkered with the design, Jake realized the complexities of collaboration were not burdens to bear. They were opportunities to enhance the foundation he had laid. The fear he had harbored transformed, morphing into determination. He was not erasing himself, but amplifying the breadth of who he could be. Standing before the mirror that morning, Jake practiced his presentation with fervor. The reflection staring back at him appeared uncertain, but beneath that surface lay a reserve of new-found confidence. This would not be a performance defined by the reservations that had previously consumed him. It would be a celebration of both his solitary journey and the collective contributions that had shaped his work. Every statement he crafted aligned with not just the mechanics of his prototype, but also the emotional underpinnings of his creative process. What if the judges could be shown that vulnerability was not a weakness, but rather a pathway to innovation? By confronting the raw truth of his journey, his doubts, fears, and eventual embrace of collaboration, he could resonate more profoundly with those who might witness his work. Jake's thoughts spiraled into a moment of epiphany as he rehearsed. Wouldn't each flaw he had encountered and every struggle he faced serve as an integral part of the finished story? He wanted his presentation to evoke emotion, to connect on a human level.
Through a vulnerability to his story, Jake's confidence grew, solidifying into a sense of purpose. With each word spoken, the doubt that had once threatened to drown him dissipated, leaving behind a sense of clarity. His path was not just about winning the competition. It was about standing true to who he had become. By the time he concluded, the atmosphere in the room was palpable. The blend of functions, aesthetics, and the passion for connection resonated with an audience that stretched beyond the scope of technicality. Jake's vision was alive and vibrant. It was rooted in the reality of his experiences and aspirations, and that authenticity was what set him apart. The panel of judges moderated their conversation with careful consideration. As he stepped off the stage, Jake felt an exhilarating rush of acceptance wash over him. The applause echoed in his ears, not just for the design, but for the mixture of bravery and honesty he had shown. He had transformed. He had risen to face his obstacles and emerge as a figure of integrity and innovation. Days later, the competition results were announced. As his name echoed through the venue, Jake felt a rush of satisfaction flooding through him. He was awarded not just for his prototype, but for the story he had woven through his presentation. The recognition felt significant in a way he never expected. He had achieved something beyond accolades. He had conquered self-doubt and embraced his multifaceted identity. Walking among his peers, he sensed a shift. No longer was he just a mechanic dubbed unworthy by past encounters. He had carved out a niche where innovation and experience coalesced. He belonged to a community that recognized not only the value of skills, but the power of personal transformation. In the following months, he secured a position at a prestigious automotive design firm. His initial status as an underestimated mechanic now a part of his compelling narrative. Each day brought fresh challenges, but Jake walked into the office with solid confidence. A father, an artist, and a proud contributor to an industry he once thought he could never breach. Through this transformation, he learned that vulnerability was not a liability, but a source of strength. Achieving success came not from dismissing where he came from, but from thoroughly embracing it. As he drove home, a smile crossed his face, buoyed by satisfaction and fulfillment. The legacy he was building for his children felt tangible and real. This was his moment. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible transformations that inspire personal growth. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about how Jake's journey concludes. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this empowering conclusion.